you.
Marie. Nakikita mo si Miss Mase? Okay na to?
Anong gagawin natin?
Ay, ano naman to? Kasungit naman. Turugis. Kainis. Wala tayo OBB ah. Ay, pen.
Thank you. Tonight's big stories. Provinces across Luzon declare a state of calamity after widespread flooding from Typhoon Egay and the enhanced Habagat.
President Marcos wants to import more rice from India after Typhoon Egay left almost 2 billion pesos in agricultural damage. Problem is, India is clamping down on its rice exports.
And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen concludes day one of her first official visit to the Philippines with a promise to usher in a new era of cooperation between the EU and the Philippines.
Welcome to the big story. I'm Regina.
I'm Maricel Halili.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Straight into our top story for tonight. Several provinces are now under a state of calamity after torrential rains brought by Typhoon Egay.
The cyclone left thousands displaced and billions of pesos in estimated damage.
Meanwhile, the European Union is stepping in to help with efforts in early weather monitoring. Take a listen.
Over 5 billion pesos in estimated damage, 1 million people affected, and several provinces now in a state of calamity. That's how Super Typhoon Egay left its mark on the Philippines last week. Marcos family's stronghold Ilocos Norte was one of the first provinces to declare a state of calamity. At least 8 towns saw severe damage, driving hundreds of families to evacuation centers. In Ilocos Sur, floodwaters also displaced several residents and destroyed bridges, making it hard to conduct relief operations in the aftermath of the typhoon. Several towns in Pangasinan also saw flooding and strong winds. Streets in Calasiao were submerged, while a gym in Dagupan City saw its roof collapse. Egay also barreled through Cagayan, having made landfall in the province twice. The cyclone left several towns and farmlands flooded. Provinces in Central Luzon were also not spared. Bataan and Pampanga are now under a state of calamity due to non-stop rains. In Pampanga, residents wade in knee-deep floodwaters as they continue their day-to-day tasks. The same goes for people living in Hermosa, Bataan. At least 7 provinces are now under a state of calamity. What's worse is that rains are expected to continue with Typhoon Falcon enhancing the Habagat or southwest monsoon. The government is now busy extending relief assistance to affected areas. But in terms of long-term solution, the Philippines is getting help from the European Union.
We're currently setting up a so-called Copernicus data mirror site within the Philippines Space Agency. And we have just signed an agreement to boost the flow on Earth observation data.
The Copernicus data technology from the EU is expected to help the Philippines with early weather warnings. It forms part of the EU 60 million euro grant for the Philippines to pursue climate change mitigation and the shift to renewable energy. Arian Kalumbiran, We Are One News.
Meanwhile, several dams have started to discharge excess water after days of non-stop rain. However, residents in low-lying areas are concerned that it may contribute to more flooding. In Valenzuela City, at least 5 barangays are flooded after days of heavy rainfall and made worse by the high tide. Residents are now worried about having to deal with higher floodwaters once the Mesa Dam releases excess water, which may also affect low-lying areas in Quezon City and Malabon. Based on Pag-asa's latest monitoring, dams in Luzon are close to hitting their normal operating level, which could trigger water spilling activities. While this means good news for our water supply, especially for Angat Dam, residents in low-lying areas are being advised to prepare ahead of time for possible flooding.
It looks like we do have to brace for more rain as Typhoon Falcon intensifies over the Philippine Sea. Pag-asa last spotted Falcon at 1,020 kilometers east-northeast of extreme northern Luzon. It is packing maximum winds of 165 kilometers per hour with gusts of up to 205 kph. The typhoon is currently moving north-northwestward away from the country, and Falcon may exit the Philippine area of responsibility tomorrow afternoon or evening. And though no wind signal is up due to Falcon, it will enhance the southwest monsoon or habagat. In turn, this will bring occasional monsoon rains over the western portion of Luzon and the Visayas in the next 3 days. This enhanced southwest monsoon or habagat will also bring gusty conditions over Zambales, Bataan, the central and southern portions of Aurora, Pampanga, and Bulacan, as well as Metro Manila and most of the Ilocos region, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, the Bicol region, and western Visayas.
Typhoon Falcon unfortunately also adds to the destruction left behind by Super Typhoon Egay on the agricultural sector. As of this morning, the NDRRMC reports that production losses caused by Egay is at around 120,000 metric tons. This translates to almost 2 billion pesos in value. Meanwhile, almost 149,000 hectares of crop areas were affected. Some 115,000 farmers and fisherfolk were also affected. So now, President Marcos, who's also Agriculture Secretary, says we'll need to import more rice. Marcos floated the idea of importing rice from India, the world's largest producer. Except, India recently announced a ban on exports of non-basmati white rice because their own local prices were starting to creep up.
Hirap ito because yung palay, iniisip ko na yung supply natin pag nag-El Nino talaga. Mag-import na naman. We have to start importing already. Everybody is preparing for El Nino. Lahat ng Southeast Asia, sabay-sabay ng bibilihan. Kaya ninenervyos ako, tataas na naman ang presyo kahit na mag-import tayo.
So it's an idea that the president has floated, and it's not exactly new kasi India is amongst our top 5 sources of imported rice. The number 1 being Vietnam. Tapos somewhere in there, either 2 or 3 is India.
I think three to five, somewhere in the 3 to 5 slot.
Yes.
Except last
The
week,
timing is off.
the timing is off. Parang, I was wondering when I was listening to that briefing, like, did no one tell the president that India just put a ban on rice exports? This is, of course, non-basmati white rice, which is what we eat.
And
But
again,
that's ironic considering that he's the agriculture secretary, so he should know.
Yun nga
Correct.
eh. Pero kasi busy rin siya, di ba? Nag-Kuala
busy din
Lumpur.
siya, exactly. He just came from abroad again, but it's a good point kasi nga naman, India is also protecting its own supply,
Yes.
right? So,
Especially, he mentioned the El Nino, which is what everyone should have been preparing for. I mean, di naman tayo nagkulang sa warning, di ba?
Correct.
Na magkaka-El Nino. And it's a good idea to start importing as soon as possible. The question is it still soon enough or are we too late?
and mind you, this ban from India came into effect before the recent typhoons that we experienced. Meaning to say, at that time, we were preparing for, I don't know if we were preparing, to be honest, but you know, this was
We would like to
before
assume.
we counted the damage from Typhoon Egay, and again now, potentially from Typhoon Falcon. So,
Pero right now, kasi sinasabi nila, am I right, Masena, enough pa naman yung buffer stock natin.
Yes,
For
that
the
was
year.
what Yusek Panganiban mentioned. But that was before
The
Egay.
bagyo.
again, before
Yeah,
pa yun.
before Egay. So now, we do not know kasi hindi nila na-take into consideration yung effect ng bagyo.
At siguro, as of now, we're still reeling from it. We still don't know exactly the extent of the damage to our rice supply.
The estimate right now, sadly, is at around 2 billion pesos of agricultural crops. So that's massive. That's a big
And yes, to talk more about this, we have with us on the show Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Po sa inyong lahat.
Okay, magandang gabi po. Sir, una sa lahat, kamusta ba yung sitwasyon ng rice industry, ng supply natin ng bigas dito sa Pilipinas? Do we have enough supply after the damage caused by the recent typhoons?
Well, right now, we still have rice, no? Ang pinaka-delikado kasi sa atin, yung July, August, September period, yung tinatawag nilang lean months, because the farmers start planting in May and June, and then they harvest only at the end of September, October, November. So we have that three-month period during which our harvest is very, very low, relatively low now. So that when we start July 1, we are supposed to have at least 60 days of stock. And then that will be augmented by imports so that we can have 90 or more days of stock until we start harvesting in late September, early October now. So when we started this year, July 1, we had 60 days of stock now. Normally, okay sana yun, no? Kasi may papasok naman na imports, no? So that even it's only 2 months supply, the imports will take care of the third month, no? Ang problema ngayon, kukunti yung pumapasok na imports dahil napakamahal, no? That the private sector is scaling back their imports because they are afraid if they will buy at such high prices, they might not be able to sell it here with a profit, no? Actually, yung sinasabi ni President Bongbong that we should import, there is nothing to stop the private sector from importing now. They can import anytime, any volume. No? But the question is, will they import given the high prices? No? So I think what the President meant was the government will be the one to import, especially if the private sector does not want to. No? But there are some legal obstacles to that, because the rice tariffication law actually prohibited the NFA from importing rice. No? It was supposed to get its buffer stock exclusively from local farmers. No? So they might try to go around that provision in the law by importing through another agency. No? But it's against the spirit of the law, and at the same time, it could be a little bit late already in the game.
Right. Sir Raul, ito kasi nga nagyayari to, it's kind of like a so-called bad timing, no? Tumama yung mga bagyo, non-stop yung habagat, tapos nag-announce ng rice export ban yung India. Having said that, when we look at importing rice, at least to prepare for El Nino, just like the President said, as a concurrent agri-chief, nasa oras pa ba tayo? Or are we looking at talagang wala tayong choice at tataas na yung presyo ng bigas?
Well, the increase in the prices, parang wala na tayong magagawa dyan, no? Kasi sa international, talagang tumataas siya with India's ban. Although we buy less than 1% of our rice from India, but because the customers of India from Africa and Middle East will start scrambling for available rice, they will run to Vietnam and Thailand where we get most of our rice. No? So tatamaan pa rin tayo, tataas yung presyo ng Vietnam, magmamahal yung imported rice. No? And we just have to bite the bullet and probably pay whatever they ask us to pay. Because if we don't get that extra 1 month supply from imports, after 2 months, wala na tayong bigas. Now, because again, we started July 1 with only 2 months supply. No? And normally that is augmented by imports. If no imports come in, September will be a very critical period for us. No?
So this period...
And maybe just to add, the impact of the typhoons will not be felt immediately kasi at the time the Egay hit us, most of the palay crops were just newly planted. No? Kasi umpisa pa lang ng rainy season. So what will happen is these people will try to replant to recover yung kanilang normal harvest schedule ng end September or October. It will be pushed back by a few weeks or even a month. No. So in a way, parang hahaba yung lean months natin. And again, that will be a problem.
When you say, sir, hahaba yung lean months, how long do you expect this to carry on? By the end of the year, next year, or depende on how much damage egg left?
We have two problems actually. This year, kung walang pumasok na imports, magkakaroon tayo ng problema around September, no? Because our available stock, and we do not harvest a lot in June, July, no? And August, we are very reliant on imports. So if we do not get enough imports in the next few weeks, magkakaproblema tayo sa September. Pagdating ng October, November, okay na tayo dahil harvest time na yon eh. No? Our next problem will be next year actually because El Nino, the Pag-asa is saying, the El Nino, which will mean very little rain coming in, will start in October. No? It will be good for the harvest because it will be not so rainy. So it will be good for the harvest in October, November. But the dams will not be filled up with water so that when we start our dry season crop next year, baka walang irrigation water. So magkakaproblema na naman tayo next year sa supply. No. So two things that we have to watch out for, and one is very immediate, yung September. The one next year, we have to prepare now.
Mr. Montemayor, isang tanong lang po. We've been talking about rice, but of course, in the recent months, as of late, nagkakakulang-kulang din po tayo ng iba't ibang other agricultural goods. Ano po yung nanganganib ngayon ng mga produkto? Of course, taking into consideration na may El Nino nga at itong medyo erratic yung weather natin of late.
Yes, actually, ang malaking tinamaan sa EGA yung corn. No? Because ang corn, ang harvest time niyan mga August eh. July, August ang harvest time niyan. So a lot of the crops in Northern Luzon, they plant a lot of corn there. Harvestin na sana yan in a few weeks time. No? So yan ang tinamaan ng malaki. And that will affect not only the corn farmers but even the livestock sector. No? And we have a very similar story. Although we import corn, the import price of corn now is very, very high also. No? So we have very limited supply because of the typhoon, and it will become very expensive to import corn. Meron din epekto sa livestock. I saw some pictures of livestock be dying from the floods, no? Drowning in the floods. No? And of course, yung mga gulay at mga short-term crops, no? But they have relatively short planting cycles. So medyo madali lang bumawi pagdating sa vegetables. But for rice and corn, they take 3 to 4 months. No?
All right. Thank you for those details. Then thank you for joining us, Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers.
Thank you. Thank you very much and good evening.
Right, we're going to pause for a quick break, but right after that, the first official visit of a European Commission president to the Philippines in nearly 6 decades has wrapped up with a promise to take cooperation to a new era. The details when we return. Keep it here.
You're watching the big story here on One News. It's a new era of cooperation. That's what European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has promised as she wrapped up day one of her official visit to the Philippines. She held a bilateral meeting with President Marcos in Malacanang earlier today, where the two discussed free trade negotiations, climate change cooperation, and the digital economy. But the most significant of her pronouncements had to do with maritime security. She said the European Union stands ready to strengthen cooperation with the Philippines in this regard, including helping build our Coast Guard capacity. She also reaffirmed the EU's support for the 2016 arbitration ruling that invalidated Beijing's claims in the South China Sea.
The European Union underlines that the 2016 award of the Arbitral Tribunal on the South China Sea is legally binding, and that it provides the basis for peaceful resolving disputes between the parties.
President Marcos also said the EU was ready to provide a grant worth 60 million euros under the Green Economy Program, which will support projects around circular economy and renewable energy. Marcos also expressed his gratitude for the EU's decision to extend recognition to seafarer certificates issued by the Philippines.
I also thank the European Commission for their decision to extend the recognition of the STCW certificates issued by the Philippines, as this has a positive impact on the employment of more than 50,000 Filipino seafarers working on board EU-flagged vessels.
Well, some bad news again for motorists. Oil companies are set to implement a significant price hike in fuel products. Diesel prices will see an increase of a steep 3 pesos and 50 cents per liter. On the other hand, gasoline will go up by 2 pesos and 10 centavos a liter, while kerosene will also see an increase of 3 pesos and 25 cents a liter. This is the third straight week that oil companies have increased prices. They've attributed this week's hike to production cuts in Saudi Arabia and the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC.
Another quick break for now, but right after that, the MTRCB has called in the producers of its Showtime to explain quote-unquote indecent acts that transpired during their show last week. The details when we return. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story on One News. Producers of the ABS-CBN noontime show It's Showtime have been summoned by the MTRCB to explain the host's supposed quote-unquote indecent acts which happened during one of the show's recent episodes. The MTRCB issued a notice to the producers of the program to appear and testify before the board. The notice stems from complaints over a scene that involved celebrity couple and Showtime mainstays Vice Ganda and Ayon Perez. In the segment Isip Bata of the show's July 25 episode, the two were seen licking cake frosting from each other's fingers, thereby eliciting mixed reactions from viewers and netizens, considering that the segment featured child guests.
Eto naman, kahit maulan, di nagpaawat ang palarong pambansa. The inter-regional school competition is back after a 4-year hiatus. Student athletes from all 17 regions kicked off this year's games, hosted by Marikina City. Kita nyo naman, kahit umuulan, tuloy ang opening day parade. Some 9,000 players will be competing in 34 sports, including events for student athletes with disabilities. The palarong pambansa will run until August 5.
Ito naman, before we go, oras na para sa ating big picture tonight. And syempre, it cannot not be about the Filipinas. Right, so this photo right here is co-captain Haley Long, teary-eyed as she thanked the thousands of Filipinos that went to Eden Park in Auckland, New Zealand for their crucial match against Norway. Of course, we know that things did not go our way in that match, but nonetheless, still a lot to be proud of for our Filipinas, who showed everyone that they can compete with the best football nations. Wow, grabe. That was a crazy match. I mean, Norway was really so good. They scored the goal like almost every 10 minutes.
They dominated.
And actually, this shows na hindi lang tayo nag-excel sa boxing, billiards. We can also excel in other sports.
Well, speaking of boxing, natalo rin si Nonito Donaire. Oo, kasi vacant kasi yung weight class belt niya. But anyway, a Mexican won it.
Bawi na lang.
But anyway, coming back to the Philippines, I wanted to say that it's objectively a historic debut for them. Yeah. It's not just us saying it, but when you look at the international coverage of the Filipinas, it's been, headlines used to describe them as epic win, an epic debut for the women's football team.
First time we
lots
qualified.
to be proud of.
First time we scored a goal. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And
For any Southeast Asian nation, not just us, right? Yeah.
All right, congratulations, Filipinas. We can't wait to have some of them maybe
I
on
know.
this show.
I know.
Talk
We
to them,
should.
right? All right, that's an open invite if anyone's watching. But that's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.